Hey guys, it's Casey, and today we're going to be talking about the books that I read in the month of July. So July was a pretty solid reading month for me, despite the fact that I had a ton of going on. I moved. These are my new shelves. There's going to be a organization / mini tour coming up soon, but I actually managed to get my reading kind of back on pace for where I want it to be. I also managed to finish my entire TBR, which is wild, and some of the books that I was just hoping to get to. Not all of them, but I still did pretty well. So overall in July, I think I read 8 books, which makes me very happy. But the overall quality of what I read was kind of meh this month. I had 0 5-star books, 4 4-star books, 3 3-star books, no 2-star books, and 1 1-star book, I think. So it was very much so a mixed bag. But overall, I'm very proud of what I was able to get done in July, and I think August is starting off even better. But let's go ahead and talk about what I managed to read in July. The very first thing that I read was Bloodchild and Other Stories by Octavia E. Butler. So this is a collection of sci-fi short stories that span a pretty wide variety of topics. And I've read Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, but I hadn't read anything else of hers, and I really enjoyed this collection. I gave this 4 stars. There were 1 or 2 in here that I didn't like. There was really only 1 that I actively didn't like, and a couple that I felt kind of meh about. But there were a couple of stories that I really enjoyed. My favorite ones in here were a short story called Amnesty and a short story called The Evening, the Morning, and the Night, I think. Overall, I really ended up liking this short story collection, and I was a little bit hesitant going in, not because I didn't think I was going to like the content, but I have struggled with short story collections in the past. I never give them they're very meh ratings to me usually, because there's usually a couple that I hate and a couple I like, and then mostly they're middle of the road. But this one, the overwhelming majority of them I really enjoyed, so overall this gets a 4 stars. If you're somebody who likes short story collections or kind of wants to see some more classic sci-fi, I think this is definitely a great book to start with. A lot of the stories in here were published, a lot of them were published earlier. These stories were written across a lot of Octavia E. Butler's life, so the earliest ones from 1971 and the most recent ones from 2003. So this spans a pretty wide variety of her writing career. Not to mention that this copy, or this edition of it, had little notes from the author at the end of each story, and I felt that really added something to it, and it talked about her mindset and what she was intending when she wrote some of these. And overall, I really like the short story collection. 4 stars. The next thing I read was Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and I gave this 4 stars. I was a little surprised to give this 4 stars. I was kind of expecting to give this a full 5 stars, but I didn't. I also expected to sob my eyes out, and I didn't. I don't know if my heart is made of stone or what's going on, but this one didn't get me as much as I expected it to. There's a lot of hype surrounding this book about how emotional it is, and it was emotional, but it didn't hit me the way that I wanted it to going in, and I think that's part of what kept it from fully getting there for me. But anyway, this book is a retelling of the Trojan War, specifically focusing on the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus. And I really love Madeline Miller's writing style. I've read Circe by her, and I like this one more, I think. The story of Circe for me just wasn't as entertaining or didn't keep me quite as gripped, but Madeline Miller's writing is absolutely beautiful, and that definitely holds true for this one as well. And I did really enjoy the story of Achilles and Patroclus, and it is very tragic, and if you know anything about Greek myth, you know where this is going when you start it, and the way some of these scenes were written just really hit me. And I did tab out a couple of spots in this because I did want to go back and look at some of the sad thematic elements of it, and again, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It just didn't blow me away as much as I expected it to. And if you're like me and you somehow waited this long to read this book, I do recommend that you pick it up. It was worth it. It did pretty much live up to the hype, except that I didn't sob my eyes out. That's about it. The next thing I read was The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang, and this is a graphic novel about this dressmaker who gets approached by this kind of mysterious man offering her a job, and she goes and she finds out that she's supposed to be making dresses for the prince, and it turns out that the prince likes to wear dresses and go out at night as this figure called Lady Crystalia, and she starts making dresses for him so that he can continue doing that. And this talks a lot about gender identity and gender expression in this really cute graphic novel format. The art in this is so cute, and it's so clean and precious, and I just really loved it. It's absolutely beautiful, and it makes me so happy. I really enjoyed this. I thought this was a very cute and approachable way to talk about a lot of these topics, and it was definitely serious without being overly down or depressing. Now there is some like parts of this that I didn't really love. There is like a little bit of a forced outing, and there was a romance aspect that I felt like was kind of unnecessary in this, but it did kind of add to some of the discussion that they were having in this. I don't know. So I did really like this, but there were just like 1 or 2 problems that I had with it that kept me from giving it full 5 stars, but I am just very happy that this book exists. It's so cute, it's so precious, and I will be rereading it when I need something just like really wholesome and cute and quick to read, because again, this is a graphic novel, so it was a pretty quick read, and it's beautiful and it's heartwarming and it makes me love graphic novels. Like, I have started really getting into graphic novels and I want to pick up all of them, just all of them. Now, it's a problem. The next book I read was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. So I borrowed this one from the library, so I don't have a physical copy of it. But I gave this one 3 stars. I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about this one going into it, to be honest. I'd read Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, and I really enjoyed those. But this was like Leigh Bardugo's first adult book. Not that I thought that that was what was gonna keep me from liking it, I just wasn't sure about the subject matter. So, the subject matter. Anyway, where am I going? So this is a kind of fantasy, dark academia mystery type book about this girl named Alex Stern, who is in a secret society at Yale. And her group is specifically supposed to be like monitoring the activities of a lot of the other secret societies, and like the rituals that they're performing. And she kind of like watches over those and prevents like ghosts and things like that from interfering. So she is fairly new to this. She has like a mentor and she has this like kind of overseer person, and the 3 of them kind of work together to perform this job. Now her mentor Darlington has been missing, which is part of the mystery that's going on, but more importantly, there ends up being a murder of a townie near campus, and Alex is convinced that it has something to do with the societies, and everyone's telling her to back off. And so it's kind of this mystery investigation as she's trying to figure out what happened to this girl and can she link it back to the activities of some of these secret societies. And I liked this, but I didn't love it. I gave it 3 stars overall. I was really intrigued by the mystery of this. I really wanted to find out what happened, which is honestly what kept me coming back to it. And I could read it for like long chunks of time when I picked it up. So I wasn't having a bad time, but I didn't super connect to any of the characters. I did like Alex, but I actually liked some of the characters around Alex a little bit more than I liked her. But the biggest problem for me was actually in the writing. The pacing felt very strange. And the thing that bugged me the most was like these like flashbacks that were melded in the middle of the narrative. So we have the timeline of her exploring this mystery. We have the timeline of kind of what happened right before Darlington went missing. And then we have a timeline of what happened to Alex before she got to Yale, how she got recruited into all of this. And I've read books with like breaks in the action for flashbacks before. Looking at you, Liza Locklamora, and like it's fine. I can usually follow it. And it's not that I had difficulty following it, it was just so jarring the way it was done in this book. I don't know. And it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly what about it I didn't like when I've liked it in other series, but it just really felt like it was kind of out of place and we were trying to do too much all at once. Like, I think I would have liked this book better if it had tried to focus on 1 or 2 of those kinds of plots. I understand why we had to do all 3, because without pieces of each one, it wouldn't have made a lot of sense, but like it really did just kind of feel like there was too much going on, and not in like it's confusing way, but just in it didn't flow right, I guess is where I'm trying to get at. It really took me out of it and I was not a huge fan of it. This is supposed to be a series, so this is the first one, and we got some more information about like a bigger plot arc mystery kind of a thing at the end, and I am curious to pick up the next one, but I'm not like rushing to do so or counting down the days till it comes out, because again, this was just a 3-star for me. I also think maybe I don't like dark academia. This is like I haven't read that many, to be fair, but just the idea of like this Yale secret societies and just this really pretentious attitude towards school and how it's supposed to be this weird, I don't know. I don't think I like the vibe. It just feels very pretentious to me in a way that is not fun to read. It's annoying. Take that as you will. The next thing I read was My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness by Nagata Kabi. This was a manga memoir type of book. I liked this a lot. I gave this 4 stars. So this is a story about the author's own life and her experience with her sexuality and growing up and her difficulties interacting with other people and being very isolated throughout her life. And I went back and forth between giving this a 3.5 and a 4 stars, and overall I think I landed on a 4 because this was one of the most like raw and honest things I've ever read. Like, she did not hold anything back as far as the way that she was thinking about things and what she has gone through. And I am really interested to get a copy for myself because I did borrow this from a friend before I moved. So normally with a manga I would show you the art style, but it's like a very simplistic art style, and I think it lent itself very well to the story. It's just kind of this story of her life as she's trying to figure out how to be an adult and how to have relationships with other people. But it starts off with her basically hiring an escort because she's had no sexual experiences, and how that goes from there, and how that actually opened a lot of doors for her professionally after she wrote about it. Like, it's very interesting. I read it like all in one sitting because it's a manga, and it was just like very emotional. Like, it felt very real. I struggled a little bit to like relate to some of it, which I think might be why it's not like amazing to me, but I did think that it was like a very interesting look into kind of what she had been going through. And again, it was just like this very open and honest like exploration of the pain that she had gone through in a lot of her young adulthood. And I know there are more volumes that come after this, and apparently like it's a real deep dive into her mental health, especially from here on out. And I did the portrayal of her mental health throughout this book. I did really enjoy this one. I don't have a lot to say like critically about it, just because I struggle to, and I think I mentioned this before when I was reviewing Persepolis, I struggle to evaluate the way someone tells their own life story, because again, that is very personal to them. But all I can say about this one is that it felt very personal, like I could tell. I really enjoyed the way it was told. I thought the format and the structure and the way that it all flowed like really solidified a lot of her points, so I did like it for that. So overall 4 stars. I don't despite all the books I have, I don't have any of these books to show you. But next I read Scarlet by Marissa Meyer, and I gave this one 3.5 stars, like 3 stars overall. So this is the second book in the Lunar Chronicles series, which is a YA sci-fi fairy tale retelling situation. So the first one, Cinder, is a retelling of Cinderella. The second one, Scarlet, is a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. And the big major like overall plot is the relationships between the people on Earth and Luna, and like the very tense politics between them. And that's kind of like where a lot of the story is revolving around. So this one followed Scarlet in, unsurprisingly, her journey to find her missing grandmother, and she gets kind of tied up with a lot of what's going on more globally when she's doing that. And I liked this one more than Cinder. I thought the writing improved. I thought it was more interesting because we've expanded the world in this way. But I didn't like the characters as much. Like, I enjoyed the story with Cinder and the prince and her android and her family like a lot more than I actually enjoyed the story of Scarlet. Scarlet was fine. I didn't love her. She's fine. Wolf, the man she encounters, was also fine, just not my type of like relationship. I don't know, it just wasn't, it didn't do it for me quite as well. I think this book could have been even a 4 star if I had cared more about Scarlet and her whole situation, but I didn't. But we did get some more of like Cinder's story woven throughout, and they kind of converge. I'm trying to be vague and non-spoiler, but everything kind of comes together towards the end, and that part I really liked. And I really liked looking at what Cinder was up to. And the new characters that were introduced in her timeline, namely Thorn, is everything to me. Unsurprisingly, because he is very much the lovable rogue type, the arrogant, cocky, flirty kind of guy. That is just always my fictional type. And I can kind of see how the different storylines are going to be woven together. The other issue I had with this one was kind of like in the first one, where I felt like I saw the twist coming, and when it was revealed, that was kind of where we stopped. And I was like, well, but I got that, I want more. I kind of felt like that a little bit in this one, like once everything kind of got together and once it was all sort of like, okay, this is where we're going, that's where we stopped. And I was like, okay, but we're starting to get into the parts that I actually care about. We're starting to do the interesting things, and that's where we're cutting off. So in a way, that's good because it makes me want to read the next one to see what those interesting things are gonna be. But it's also kind of frustrating because I was like, I feel like we could have just gotten to that point earlier in the book and I would have had a better time with it. So I guess that means the trajectory is just up from here, but we'll see. I am actually enjoying the Lunar Chronicles more than I expected to. I don't know why I was so sure I wasn't gonna like them, but I am enjoying them. And I will be reading Crest, which is the 3rd one, in August. The next thing I read was Edgar Huntley, or Memoirs of a Sleepwalker by Charles Brockton Brown, and this is the one I'm giving, I think, 1.5 stars. So this is a classic that I read for a book club that I'm doing with my friends because one of my friends read this in college and absolutely adored it. Nope. This book is clown shoes bullshit all the way down, and not in a way that was entertaining to me. So this is a story about a man named Edgar Huntley whose best friend Waldegrave has died before the beginning of this book. And this book is all a letter from Edgar to his wife talking about the events of this story. He's going and visiting where Waldegrave died, like the tree where he was found, and he finds this man just kind of digging at the ground and crying, and he's like, well, that's suspicious, I'm gonna follow him. And he follows him and tries to figure out what is going on and tries to confront him, and ends up going on this like really weird adventure. I don't know. I hate this man. I hate this man so much. This man is insufferable. The writing was so hard to read, and I think it was done intentionally. Like, I think the writing is meant to be a little obtuse even for its time because of the way that he is as a character. He's a highly unreliable narrator, and like parts of this make me think I should have enjoyed it. Like, my friend specifically told me to go into this assuming that this man is lying and completely unreliable and just wants to show off how cool he is, and everything is just batshit wild the entire time. And I tried to do that, but even doing that, I found myself so annoyed with him, and I wasn't that interested in what was going on to slog through this writing, which was just miserable for me to read. However, I've got to give it credit. Some of the scenes were kind of wild, and like hearing about them, they sound a lot more interesting. So there's a scene where he like wakes up in the bottom of a pit, and he's like, how long have I been down here? It could be days. I'm gonna starve and die. I'm gonna die of thirst. What's the only solution? Well, I better cut myself and drink my own blood. But then he's like, wait, hang on, I see a light. Starts to climb out of the hole, finds a panther, 360 no-scopes this panther, and then is like, well, I must eat this panther raw. And it's like, sir, you've been down here for 10 minutes. Like, it's wild. And parts of that actually sound entertaining. And like, my friend basically did a whole recap, like Edgar Huntley abridged, and that was like great. Like, what happens in this is kind of funny, but the actual act of reading it was so miserable, and I just could not stand it. I was actively annoyed and angry at this man at all times, to the point that I just did not have a good time. So I think 1.5 stars, just because like it wasn't like it was okay. I was over it. I was over it the whole time. Now I'm feeling like I'm being too harsh on it because that scene is really funny, but like, again, actively just had to force myself to pick this up, read a couple chapters, and move on to something else because I could not sit down and read this. And the last thing I read was Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I finally finished this book. And that's because I buddy read this with Gregory, and I will link his channel down below. We both really struggled with the beginning half of this book, I think. Overall, I think I'm gonna give this one 3 stars. So this book is a high epic fantasy about this world that's kind of divided between the East and the West. And in the West, there is this queen who is kind of the last of her line currently. And every queen in her family, when they give birth to one girl. And it is said that that royal line keeps the dragons from returning and like raising the whole world. And so in the West, we follow kind of that queen, but we're doing it from the perspective of a different woman who has come to protect her. By masquerading as one of like her handmaidens, who is actually kind of a monk that follows a different religion from the Priory of the Orange Tree. In the East, there's a very different religious system where they kind of worship dragons, and although they're different types of dragons, they still worship these dragons. And one of the main perspectives we follow over there is a woman who is training to be a dragon rider. So this is a multi-perspective fantasy. I think there's 4 primary perspectives in this. The 2 I mentioned, there's a apothecary who has been exiled and another man who has been kind of politely asked to leave the queendom, who is kind of a noble that is going out on like a reconnaissance mission, and it's following these 4 as the old dragons, the nameless one, is attempting to come back. And I have such mixed opinions on this book. I really loved the ending of it. I enjoyed the characters. Of those 4 perspectives, there was really only one that I just didn't really care about. The other 3 I really enjoyed, and I thought they were really well written characters, and I really liked that. The plot of this was, I honestly think, amazing. I adored the way that everything came together. I thought the through lines and everything in this was really interesting, and again, the way everything was woven together at the end, I really liked, but I struggled hardcore to get through the beginning of this. This book looks huge. The pages are kind of thick. I mean, it's not short. It's like an 800-page book. But I've read books that are that long or longer and had not nearly as much trouble as I had with this one. I just could not get myself to pick it up. I even read this over the course of a couple months and jumped in on page like 250-ish when I sat down to actually start reading it this month. But The thing that got me about this book is I feel like the pacing was all wrong. Like the first half of the book, we spent so much time establishing these characters where they were and doing world building that did feel a little bit info dumpy. Like it was very, very history heavy, which does pay off by the end, but it was like a lot to keep track of and just kind of really dense. And it was so much just establishing things for so long that it just did not grip me and get me into it. So I felt like the first half was paced entirely too slowly, and then the second half, or really parts 4 and 5, were so interesting and so much action happened and so much movement of the characters happened. And I felt like we did that part way too fast. I felt like that was the part I really wanted to slow down and learn more about what the characters were thinking, what they were doing, and the plot mechanisms. Like it felt like it was reveals started to happen, things started to slot in place, and then we just boom, boom, boom to the end. And that was so jarring for how long it took us to get there. The payoff was worth it in that I really did enjoy the ending of this and I think the plot was amazing, but just the pacing of it was all wrong and it just did not work for me in that sense. I am gonna give this a 3-star because honestly the first part of the book is like a 2-star for me and the end was like a 4-star, so 3 stars overall. And I generally am alright with slow fantasy, but it's just like I didn't feel like I got rewarded for it enough. Like there wasn't enough to keep me hooked in the beginning. Parts 4 and 5 though were really good and I wish we had spent more time in them or started doing some of that earlier. I honestly think this book might have benefited from being a duology just so that you could have added more to that, because adding more to that and making this a standalone would make this book huge. But also if you made it a duology, I'm not sure what would even happen in the first half of the book, so I'm not really sure what the answer is here. And I really did like Samantha Shannon's writing, which makes me really interested to check out The Bone Season, which is a series of hers I've been wanting to start for a long time. So I think I might try to get around to that a little bit faster than I originally thought I would, especially since that is a longer series, so it might fix some of the problems I had with this one. All right, so these plus 3 other books that I no longer have or were audiobooks are the books that I read in July. Again, like I said, quantity-wise, July was a really good reading month for me. Quality-wise, very middle of the road. It's my first month where I haven't had a single 5-star, I think, all year, so that's fun for me. I can tell you, August is already turning out better. But I'd love to chat with you guys about these or talk about what you guys managed to read in July. But I think that's all I've got for you guys today. If you guys want to keep up with what I'm reading, I have a link to my Goodreads down in the description below. But other than that, I'll see you guys next time.